Welcome to the Chalkboard, my fellow football nerds, for episode number 19 of Chalk Talk, brought to you by the Painted Lines. I'm your host, Shane Half. You can follow me on Twitter at @halfandhalf_TPL. I'm joined today by the best co-host in the game. You've seen him on the Tough Cover Pod. It's Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at @MarkHenryJr_. Mark, how you doing today?
Yeah, this is a tough one. It's tough to come on after these losses that are just so brutal to watch and have all these takeaways. But here we are. I'm more excited to talk about the NFL, and we're getting to that point of the year where I think I'll be watching Red Zone most weeks, like on the main TV with the Eagles on the side TV, which is crazy, or maybe a game I bet on. But yeah, I already am starting to care about football as a whole more than the Eagles as a whole. So it's earlier than I expected this year for that to be the case.
Yeah, it's a brutal game, and we're going to get into it. We do have a good show lined up for you guys today. I don't know if it can be a great show after what we all were forced to endure, but we're going to review every single Week 7 game, except obviously the Monday night game that is on tonight. But before we get to that, this is going out live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter. So drop us a comment. Let us know what you want to talk about. We'd love to interact with you guys live on the air. We're also on Apple Podcasts, so please follow, rate, review. All of that helps us out tremendously. So, Mark, as much as we hate to do it, let's get into it. The Eagles at the Raiders, they lose 33-22 in a game that was not as close as the box score indicated. Where do you want to start on this one?
Yeah, I mean, you could start with the start of the game where it looked promising. It was a promising start to the game. You go right down the field, you score, and then obviously Derek Carr goes right down the field on us. We end up getting a pick soon after that, the Avonte Maddox pick, which felt like, maybe the kind of momentum swing of the game where it was still tied 7-7 at that point. It was in the red zone. You stop them from scoring. You start driving yourself. And I really think the turning point of the game was, I don't know the exact moment of the game that this happened time-wise, but 3rd and 3 on our own, or on their 38, we get a false start, which backs us up 5 yards. It's 3rd and 8, and then Jalen Hurts takes a sack. It's not like it was his fault. He kind of got converged on from both sides. Rough game from Mailata, which I'm sure we'll talk about more. Mm-hmm. But this was that was the turning point of the game to me when you go from 3rd and 3 at the 38, when I'm thinking at that point, we're getting points here. We got to get a field goal, or we got to get a touchdown. We're at a point where we need points on that drive. You take that false start to back you up. 5 yards doesn't sound like a lot, and a false start might sound like the most important penalty, but 3rd and 3 and 3rd and 8 is a very big difference. And then obviously the sack comes. The Raiders are able to pin their ears back on 3rd and 8, and that completely changed the game right there. Punting in that situation, even though we pinned them on their 3, I think, they went right down the field, and that just began the rest of the game where Derek Carr was able to do whatever he wanted.
Yeah, it was 7-7 at that point in time. It was late in the second quarter, and then, the 97-yard drive, it was a backbreaker. I guess I'm just confused. I've been told for weeks if the Eagles ran the ball more, they'd be better, and the Eagles ran the ball 32 times. I'm really confused why we didn't win this game. And obviously this was a game you expected to run the ball more against a Raiders defensive front that not the best against the run. And I think we saw the Eagles come out to do that. And Miles Sanders starts the game hot. He's got 6 carries for 30 yards, and then he goes down with the ankle injury, an ankle injury that looked really bad when it happened. They've since said he's kind of week to week, just a sprain. So that's good news. And hopefully he'll be back quickly.
Yeah, to your point about that, I'm sure that the people that were yelling and screaming about that would say that. They would just say, oh, well, Miles Sanders is out, so we didn't really get to see what it would have been like. And he did look good on the first drive, and until he got hurt, Miles, I will say he was taking what he could get. But the problems go so far beyond anything on the field. That's why I'm having a hard time. I did another podcast, the Philly Sports Podcast, where it's I'm having a hard time kind of breaking down the game and breaking down the personnel. And I think you'll be with me here based on the conversation we were having offline. And
Howie's the problem. And it's not like I'm breaking any news to anybody. And if you've listened to this podcast at all, you know neither of us are fans of Howie. But I don't have any faith that no matter what happens in this year, they're going to fire him. I really don't. So it's hard for me to just sit here and evaluate week after week what's going on in the field, because I think the problems go so far beyond what's going on in the field and so far beyond Jalen Hurts, which we'll get into, so far beyond the defense and Jonathan Gannon, so far beyond Nick Sirianni. It goes all the way up to Jeffrey Lurie from Howie Roseman and the player personnel and the drafting and everything that's going on in this front office. This organization needs a complete and utter overhaul. I don't know how else to say it. When you need to get rid of your GM, you need to get new people in the room scouting and drafting. You need to get a new entire coaching staff. If we have no faith in our head coach or defensive coordinator, it looks like we're probably going down the road of getting a new quarterback next year, whether that be a veteran stopgap guy if we don't like anyone in the draft or someone in the draft. This is, this is the most I've ever sat here about an Eagles team and advocated for a full-on, rebuild. And I know it might sound crazy. Sirianni's a one-year head coach, and I'm not even necessarily pinning this all on him, whether I do think there is some things to pin on him. But this is just a top-down organizational failure. And I'm not someone who kills the Eagles like a lot of people do, but it's hard to really look past the just absolute unrest this organization is in so shortly after such a successful run of 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, it's, we've talked about this before. I don't even know how do you evaluate players in the context of the scheme? How do you evaluate coaches in the context of the personnel that they're saddled with? I just don't even know. And this is where we're at. Howie Roseman's the biggest problem with the Eagles. He always has been, and he's always going to be. And that's what's so frustrating is you have no expectation that they're ever actually going to dump this guy and move on. We look at the offense. Biggest takeaway from the offense is stop moving Jordan Mailata around. You drafted this guy in the 7th round. He's never played football before. And in 3 years, he learns how to play a position good enough that you pay him to be your franchise left tackle. And then we're just moving him all around because our backup, who is a 1st-round pick, that's played football his whole life, can't manage to switch sides, but we expect the guy that just picked up football to do it. They have got to put him in a spot and leave him there. He was bad, but he's just coming off of a couple weeks of right tackle, and then he had to move, he's moving around in the game even, and just we can't keep doing this. You got to put this guy in a spot and leave him there, or they're going to hamstring his development.
Yeah, I can't agree more. It reminds me of I know you're not a baseball fan or a Phillies fan, but it's just I've seen it happen so many times with Phillies players that get moved around position and moved around in the lineup and moved around the rotation from starter to bullpen. And it just feels like deja vu. No one knows how to ruin young, exciting prospects like the city of Philadelphia as a whole. It's not an Eagles problem. It's just a Philadelphia sports problem as a whole. You don't have, I'm not a Flyers guy, but the Sixers, I won't even get started. But there are so many problems on this team that it's even hard to kind of take away positives. There are positives. I thought Josh Sweat looked good. There was a lot of holdings against Josh Sweat that he called. Obviously, no sacks in this game, so nothing really of note. But I think Josh Sweat's promising. I think Avonte Maddox has been great this year.
That's my guy.
Yeah, that's our guy. I shouted you out when he got the pick. We've been praising Avonte since before the season. We were excited about Avonte being a slot corner, and it's hard to just sit here and be like, oh well, these are the positives and these are the positives, because the problems are so much bigger than one game. The problems are so much bigger than the season. The problems are so much bigger than the rest of the season. I'm just at this point, I'm really starting to dive deep into draft mode. And it's so early for that. But I believe, and I'm sure you'll bring it up at some point. So I'll just bring it up now. I think we have the 2nd, 6th, and 13th picks currently, with Miami at 2, us at 6, and the Colts at 13.
Yeah. Did you see where I tweeted out Derek Carr's passing chart from yesterday? Just anything he wanted everywhere. I should have marked out that one incompletion in the backfield. He didn't have that, but so here's the thing. Like, I don't even know. Let's kick back to offense while I try to figure out how I want to formulate this. So I'm going to pin you down here. Who's the biggest problem with the Eagles offense? Is it Jalen Hurts or is it Nick Sirianni? Who's the bigger problem?
No, I'm joking. I'll still say Sirianni. Yeah, I'll still say Sirianni just because I do think we saw glimpses of what Jalen Hurts could do with Doug Peterson. And I know that's funny to say now looking back because that looked so incomplete, those games with Jalen to close last year. And there were so many things that we didn't get to see that we wanted to see. Obviously, coming into this year, we were excited or interested to see how Hurts would look. And I don't think that we've been, it's been terrible, but it hasn't been what we wanted or hasn't been what we hoped for, obviously, at all. And I think this, I'll kind of parlay your question into kind of just, I think everyone should apologize to Doug Peterson. I saw that there were tweets out there today. He's at a golf outing, and I think in the Philly area, he's loving life. And how couldn't he be? I'm sure he, in the back of his head or whatever, even outright, he's got to be watching this and being like, I mean, come on. I was clearly not the issue. And I do think Doug Peterson's play calling lent itself to Jalen Hurts a little bit better, just his aggressiveness and some of that. And I had a ton of problems with Doug Peterson last year. I'm not trying to sugarcoat and say that I think Doug Peterson is some excellent head coach, but I think he's a head coach. And I don't think Nick Sirianni is at all.
I tweeted yesterday, I said, I think we can conclude that Doug Peterson was definitely the problem in Philadelphia all along, and firing him was the correct decision. And then I had to clarify in the comments, like, that is sarcasm. Don't quote tweet me 6 weeks from now when the Eagles are 2-12 or whatever we are, and think this was serious. Like, it wasn't. But
wait, while we're on Doug Peterson, though, there was those rumors that the Raiders were interested in Doug Peterson. Any chance that Rich Bisaccia holds on to this job now and Doug doesn't even get a chance at it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, they've won 2 in a row. They're headed into a bye week. If you're making the switch, this is when you do it. I don't know. He's looked good. They've looked good through 2 weeks, and
I don't think you can hire someone right now, at least.
Yeah, I think you stick with the hot hand right now and see what happens. On this, I mean, for Hurts versus Sirianni, my answer yesterday would have been that Jalen Hurts is the biggest issue. Routinely missing easy throws. He's looked bad. His accuracy's been bad. He's not reading the defense. But then you get to Nick Sirianni's press conferences. I don't know if you saw any of that or any of the quotes coming out of that. He even talked about, I'm going to try to pull this up over here. I should have had it ready. But his answer about John Clark tweeted and said, I asked Nick Sirianni about the slow start in the first half. And this is what he said. I felt it was a lack of possessions. This is the ultimate team game. We've got to get the ball back from our defense to our offense. It felt a little out of rhythm because of the lack of possessions. Like, whether that's true or not, and it's not, that's an unacceptable response from a head coach. And it shows a major lack of accountability. And so hearing those clips, if I have to pick between the quarterback who stands on the podium after every game, even the Chiefs game where he played really well and he said, it's my fault, I've got to be better, or the head coach who's throwing his defensive coordinator under the bus, like that's a bad look. And I don't know how you come back from that. There needs to be some major backtracking from that. That's unacceptable from your head coach.
So he already did backtrack from that, and he already did that was actually like, I think that must have just been like a one-on-one with John Clark. In the press conference later, Jimmy Kempski, who I think quote tweeted the initial thing being like, oh, great, our rookie head coach who's underperforming is already calling out his DC. This is good stuff. And he asked him like a hard-hitting question about it, and Sirianni completely backtracked on it. But I think it says a lot. And I think, and again, it's so funny that there's so many parallels in the city of Philadelphia. Doc Rivers just threw his assistant coach under the bus on Friday night for not challenging
a certain play that he obviously had the authority to challenge. So it's just a Philadelphia head coach thing. Nothing's their fault. You can always pawn it off onto assistant coaches and always pass the blame. And to your point about Hurts being the problem, and to your point at the end about, how he's able to accept everything and accept blame, and he's a stand-up guy and a professional. I just have this sinking suspicion and this feeling that this team ends up going 5-12, 6-11, and everything gets blamed on Jalen. We bring back Howie, we bring back Sirianni, we bring back Gannon, we draft a quarterback, or we trade for a quarterback, whatever.
Which doesn't look good, by the way. You and I are the draft guys. It doesn't look good going into this class, but
I still have my two guys I really like that I think will end up going pretty high. But it's not as rock solid a quarterback as the last two have been for sure. It's tough. I just really hope Philadelphia has this tendency with all their sports to blame a bad season or a bad playoff performance or whatever it may be on one guy, when usually it's not just a one guy issue. Things are usually never that simple in sports. Things are usually a structural or a systematic issue or something that is bigger than one person. And I think we can all agree that this is bigger than one person. And I'm not saying that you said that I know that you were just saying
sure.
game. Yeah. But I just hope that Jalen Hurts is not the only thing that doesn't come back next year. Like if they are going to bring back the head coach, the DC, and the GM and bring in a new quarterback, and that's going to be the fresh coat of paint that's supposed to get people excited for next year, I'm not buying, because I just think it goes so far beyond Hurts. And I don't know how many ways I could say that, but I just hope that they kind of take a serious look in the mirror.
I asked the question because this is where I'm at. Like, it's been a dumpster fire product all season. If the Eagles are 5 weeks down the road and it's been more of what we've seen the last couple of weeks, whichever one of those guys you think is the issue needs to go now. Like, if we're 5 weeks down the road and it looks like this, and you think, you know what, I think it's Jalen Hurts. I think Nick Sirianni could do this. I think Hurts just can't perform. Then bench him and put Minshew in and let Sirianni prove himself over the last 6 games. Vice versa, if you think Nick Sirianni is hamstringing Jalen Hurts and there's a chance he's the guy, fire him and give Jalen Hurts 6 games with somebody else, because you cannot get to the end of this season and it look like it's looked the last few weeks and then sit here in the offseason and go, well, we just don't know who the problem is. Like, figure it out. But if it looks like this in 5 more weeks, one of them needs to step up. One of them needs to be gone so we can figure out for sure what we think about the other one. And so that's why I asked the question. That was my lead into it. Like, I would have said yesterday, I think Hurts is the issue. Give him 5 more games. And if it still looks like this, let's see if Sirianni can play with Minshew at quarterback. But after his comments, that's just a bad look. But I will say, I mean, he's got a point. Jonathan Gannon's got to go. And I would have fired him this week. And I was a defender of Jonathan Gannon at the beginning of the year. I talked about the adjustments I could see him making and that he was hamstrung by personnel. He's no longer making adjustments. Like, we played man coverage on 3 snaps yesterday. We had 2 safeties 30 yards off the line of scrimmage on the majority of our plays, and Derek Carr just picked us apart. And, we said on the preview show that they have explosive plays, and so we were going to give him the underneath. And I didn't think that Derek Carr would do that. I didn't think he'd be patient enough to do that. 2 or 3 drives in, it's clear he's patient enough to do that, and you have to adjust. And the Eagles never did it. And you can hear the frustration from guys like Fletcher Cox, who it's not the first time he sounded frustrated. Even from Rodney McLeod, who's a guy who's never spoken like that before. They're frustrated with their defensive coordinator. And to me, Jonathan Gannon needs to be gone. 10 days between our last game and this one, and this is what we came up with. Derek Carr, and our pass rush has not made a huge impact this year. It made almost no impact yesterday. But Derek Carr's time to throw was 2.25 seconds. That's a full half second faster than his average. That's a 20% speed up because we are so far off of these guys. No aggression. And if he's not willing to change, he needs to go because the Eagles defense has no chance with him calling the shots the way he has been.
Yeah, I could not agree more. There's no redeeming quality to this defense right now. And you mentioned not getting pressure. You mentioned not getting sacks, and the amount of money we're spending on the defensive line right now to not get pressure and to not get sacks when you factor in the Sweat extension, when you factor in the Barnett option that obviously we accepted for him to be here this year, and then obviously the Cox and Hargrave contracts, the draft capital you used on Milton Williams this year, and the draft capital you used on the D-line in general. It's unacceptable for the D-line to not stand out in the way that it's not standing out currently. And that's one of the biggest problems with the team right now.
Yeah. The last thing I want to mention from this game, and then I'm tired of talking about it, but can you explain to me what Nick Sirianni was thinking accepting that penalty on the Raiders opening drive? So they're at the 47-yard line. They pick up 2 yards on third down, so it's down to the 45. He accepts a holding, so it's a 3rd and 15 instead of a 4th and 5. Now, he accepts this holding against a defense that has more big plays of 20-plus yards than anybody in the NFL, and he does it presumably so the Raiders kicker, who missed an extra point in this game, doesn't get a shot at a 62-yard field goal. Like, what are we doing? Like, if you're not concerned about a 62-yard field goal, you're trying to back him up for the punt, because that's the area of the field that punters often take a delay of game on purpose anyways to give themselves more room. It just did not make any sense to me.
No, I said it immediately. And once he did it, you immediately knew what was going to happen. You knew they were getting a first down. It was so obvious.
Yeah. Okay. I'm over it. You got anything else you want to say about this game?
No, I got it all out.
All right. Well, let's move on around the NFL then. Thursday night, the Cleveland Browns traveled to Denver to face the Broncos. They come out with a 17-14 win on the arm of Case Keenum, who in an alternate universe, you think back to 2017, Nick Foles heats up in the playoffs and has his crazy run that he never replicated after that. Well, Case Keenum had that year all year. And then, the interception happens in the NFC title game. But, in an alternate universe, that could be Keenum that goes and hoists that Lombardi trophy. But Keenum, he wins the game here. Baker's dealing with a torn labrum, and he's got a fracture too. He acts like he's going to be back this week. Stefanski was like, yeah, I don't know about that. What do you make of the Browns? Can they win a couple of games with Keenum? What are we looking at here?
I don't know. I think this said more about Denver than it did Cleveland. I think Denver's a dumpster fire, and I think they're going to be a 5-6 win team this year. And that's pretty funny after a 3-0 start that people were kind of freaking out about with against some terrible competition. But I think it said more about that.
One of my bigger preseason future bets was Denver under 6.5. And I just filed that away as lost money after the first 3 weeks. And I'm getting hopeful again. I'm not going to lie.
That's like Penn State under 9.5 for me. Now it's like it's going to cash this weekend. But for a couple of weeks there, it was like 5-0. And it's like, oh, man. Yeah, Cleveland, it's a shame because they're my Super Bowl pick to go to the Super Bowl, at least to face the Rams. And I still think that they have the talent and the roster to do so, but they've had like a San Fran level list of injuries this year when it comes to having Chubb, Hunt, Odell was out for some time, Landry was out for some time, Donovan Peoples-Jones was banged up, Njoku was banged up, I think Hooper was banged up, obviously Baker. So I think they even have some stuff going on the offensive line. I think both their tackles were hurt in this game, or I can't remember who played or who didn't play out of their offensive line, but they are just so banged up. JOK's hurt. It's such a laundry list of injuries. I hope that Cleveland is able to kind of get right without tanking the season. They play Pittsburgh in Cleveland next week. I wonder if they're able to win that game. This banged up. It's going to be a tight game. I wouldn't bet on that on either side.
Yeah, there's only so much you can do when you face that many injuries. And, their best hope right now is just that they can hang in it until, guys get healthy. Hopefully they can still be in the playoffs and, they hope they can make a run. But they get the win. That's all that matters right now. Hopefully they can get healthy on this longer week. So up next we have the Giants at the Panthers. The Giants win 25-3. Daniel Jones looks good. Even while missing 7 starters on the offense, he goes 23 of 33 for 203 yards and a touchdown, added 28 yards on the ground. Meanwhile, Sam Darnold was benched for PJ Walker, who went 3 for 14 passing. So I don't know. We said last week it's time to apologize to Adam Gase. It's past due. The Panthers started 3-0, and they've lost 4 straight. And I believe you had a tweet about that. That you've quote tweeted a few times to take a victory lap on, but the Panthers just looking abysmal down the stretch.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some more quote tweets coming down the stretch here of that tweet. I just remember looking at that in the summer being like, man, people are going to love the Panthers after 3 weeks and it's not going to go well. So I'm happy I sent that tweet out because it's exactly what's happened. 4 losses in a row now. Obviously no Christian McCaffrey still. I do think this is probably a 4-3, 5-2 team if they have McCaffrey. And I don't also necessarily think it's fair to look at this game as like a blowout for the Giants. And I've heard a lot of people really high on the Giants. This game was 5-3, like halfway through the third quarter. Like this game was thrown away by Sam Darnold and sacked away by Sam Darnold. This was not like some, and maybe if you want to credit the Giants defense, you can credit the Giants defense there. But to me, it just looked like an offense that had absolutely no chance with what they were throwing out there at quarterback for Carolina. So, I mean, Daniel Jones, 23 for 33, 203 yards. It's not like he lit the world on fire or anything. He obviously did have like the catch of the year. But I don't think that this was some like, oh, the Giants have really turned it around type game. I think this is it kind of similar to the Denver-Cleveland thing. I think it says more about Carolina than New York.
Yeah, Trevor Sikkema tweeted out at halftime the box score, and he said the Giants had a 5-run bottom of the second or something like that.
Yeah. It was a bizarre score. Halfway through the third, I thought it was going to be like one of those games that finishes, I don't know, like 8-6 or something. But Daniel Jones ends up putting up some garbage time numbers too at the end there.
Yeah. Speaking of garbage time. Yeah, never mind. We won't get into it. I put out a tweet about Hurts stats by quarter. You can go look at it on my timeline if you want to see it. But spoiler alert, it's all in the fourth quarter when the game's over. So anyways, moving on to New England at the Jets. New England wins this game 54-13. I had New England in this game and I had the Jets over. And I was begging the Patriots to just run this clock out and stop scoring so the Jets wouldn't score again. Because the total was 17.5 for the Jets, but I cashed both of those.
I think you got those bets from me on the preview show. I had Jets under 17.5 and Pats minus 6.5. I loved those bets. Those are my only bets that I hit until the Colts game on Sunday night. It was a rough 1:00 sleep for me other than this game. And you're exactly right. In that fourth quarter when it was fit, I was so nervous that the Jets were going to start scoring just by osmosis. Like the Patriots just wouldn't stop scoring. It wouldn't stop kicking it off. And the Jets got so many chances and so many possessions. I was like, man, if Mike White wants to have any sort of future as a backup in this league, he's got to get a touchdown here. And I really hope he doesn't. He doesn't, and they trade for Joe Flacco a day later.
Yeah, what are the Jets thinking? Like you're 1-5. Why would you give up a pick for Joe Flacco? Like your season is already dead. I don't understand the point here. And what makes it even better is they gave up a 6th that can turn into a 5th. Meanwhile, the Eagles got Gardner Minshew for a 6th. So like the Jets paid more for Joe Flacco than the Eagles did for Gardner Minshew, and I just don't understand the NFL anymore.
Yeah, I don't know what the Jets are doing. I think this is just like a Robert Saleh, like I don't want to be embarrassed in my first year as a coach move. Like get me something that I can think. They probably called about Minshew, and we were probably like, fuck no, we're not giving you Minshew. So they were like, I guess we'll take Flacco. We got him last year. I think I don't know what to say about what the Jets are doing. Joe Douglas, we've said it before on this podcast. I think it's time to start questioning some Joe Douglas moves personally.
Yeah. So, lots of injury news in this game. Zach Wilson leaves with the knee injury. Devin McCourty and Jonnu Smith both leave with injuries for the Patriots. So, lots of injuries all around. But ultimately, we both make some money on that game. You mentioned the Colts game. Did you have the Colts money line, or did you just have them against the spread?
So I had them spread, and that was what was on my card. And I ended up, because I had such a rough day, I was like, oh, you know what? I wanted a little juice on it. Let me throw it on the money line. I ended up throwing on it. Fell asleep at like halftime because I'm so washed up nowadays. Woke up to a nice little winner. That was like a nice little pick me up after a rough Sunday.
I was even for the day, and then I had the money line on the Colts, so I ended up positive too. But
no, it's always great.
All right, so Kansas City at Tennessee, which surprising outcome. Maybe it shouldn't be. Tennessee wins 27-3 over the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes is sacked 4 times. He's intercepted once. He fumbles once. The Chiefs have now turned it over at least twice in 5 out of their last 6 games. Are the Chiefs done? Like, are they even going to make the playoffs?
You look at their schedule, it's really brutal. They have a really, really, really brutal schedule. They do have the Giants coming to Kansas City this week, so they will be 4-4, I think. But after this week, it gets really tough. I still think they probably win 9-10 games and sneak into the playoffs. But we'll see. It's been rough. I don't really even necessarily know what the problem is. I will say I do think that like the people burying Patrick Mahomes out there are and I'll probably say this, he could have like 10 more terrible weeks. And I'd say this every week because he had the best first 3 years to an NFL career that anyone's ever had. So I think that we should kind of give people who show that level of greatness a little bit of slack when they're still putting up pretty crazy numbers until this game. But yeah, props to Tennessee. I mean, the Tennessee Titans, after week 1, it looked like, wow, what is this team going to be? They got blown out by Arizona, which looked worse at the time. Obviously, Arizona's undefeated now, so it looks a little better. But Tennessee, the last 6 days, they beat the 2 teams that were in the AFC Championship game last year.
Yeah, and the one negative thing you got to worry about if you're a Titans fan is their offensive line injuries just continue to mount. And so much of their game is predicated on the run game, the play action, and not that, anything is going to totally shut Derrick Henry down, but you got to have an eye on their offensive line and hope that they can get healthy. But yeah, for your point with Mahomes, to be honest, I'm more concerned about Andy Reid than I am about Patrick Mahomes at this point. Like, you've got a quarterback who's clearly going through it, who's clearly had his confidence shaken. He doesn't trust his defense. He doesn't trust his offensive line. Like, what are the Chiefs? What is Andy Reid doing to protect his quarterback here? We talk about protecting rookies all the time, and we think you don't have to protect other people, but sometimes, you got to do something here because Mahomes is in a spiral. And I'm not saying you're going to ruin Mahomes or anything like that, but you got to get this guy back on track, and asking him to be the guy he was last year is clearly having a negative effect on him. And so, Reid's got to do something here, in my opinion, to get Mahomes back on track.
Yeah, I don't know what that is necessarily, but I do think that this should fall on Reid and this should fall on the defense, and the feeling of kind of helplessness that Mahomes probably has. I do think that that's inspired by how terrible the defense and how bad the offensive line has been. Orlando Brown, that was their big addition this offseason. He was a turnstile yesterday. Which is
shocking because he played left tackle last year at a very high level.
It's bizarre. Yeah. I don't know what's going on there. They spent a lot of money on the O-line, and it doesn't seem to have really made a big difference.
Yeah. And speaking of that defense, no big deal. They just have the Packers, Raiders, and Cowboys as their next 3 opponents. So it's all uphill, right?
Is that the Chiefs?
Yeah. The Chiefs defense. They get a face of it.
They play the Giants this coming week, but after that, those are their 3 games.
Oh, is it Giant? Okay, I must have missed that when I was looking at the schedule. So they get one easy one.
Yeah, that's what they'll be 4-4. They got to win one of those 3 games though, right there, to go to 5-6.
Yeah. All right, well, let's keep it moving here. We got the Green Bay Packers go to the Washington Football Team. Did not cash this bet on the over. Packers win 24-14. In a game that was close for a long time and still closer than it ever should have been. I don't know. Green Bay, I wrote this down. They have allowed, going into this game, they allowed 15 straight touchdowns on red zone possessions. And against Washington, they got 4 stops in a row. So, a little bit better, I guess. It was the best defensive game of the year so far for Washington. If you tell them they're going to hold Aaron Rodgers to 24 points, you'd be happy. but they only scored 10 points despite having the ball inside the 25 6 times. And so you're not going to win games that way.
That was just a nightmare for the overs. Like I had the over as well. For overs better to everywhere. That's just like you dream of that and wake up in a cold sweat. Like so many times inside the 20 and they just couldn't punch it in. Heineke he slid into the end zone and they didn't give him the touchdown. He even had a QB sneak where he fumbled it and picked it up and you can't advance. It was just brutal. It was just a brutal over to not cash. By the way, going back to the Eagles real quick, forgot this as the QB sneak came up. Jalen Hurts is a bad QB sneaker. They gave him the first down on the 4th and inches that we did. I don't even know if he got it. And then obviously he couldn't get a touchdown. I had Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown scorer plus 160. QB sneak on the 1 and Max Crosby jumps over the offensive line and stops him from scoring. And that was like, I was at the end of a brutal Eagles game where they're getting blown out. I was hoping I could get some sympathy units out of Jalen Hurts there. And I couldn't even get that, but yeah, I mean,
the next play is when the snap hit the right guard's hand, right?
Yeah, unbelievable.
All right, Miami Dolphins at the Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta walks away with a 30-28 win. I was watching this game. This is a crazy game. So Atlanta had a 2-possession lead. Then they lose the lead with a little under 3 minutes left, and then Matt Ryan gets the game-winning drive. I was watching that as the Eagles game was kicking off, and I thought, no matter what happens, at least Eagles fans can be happy about that. And man, did I not realize how much we needed that to cling to. But Kyle Pitts has his second straight 100-yard game. First rookie tight end, I believe, to ever do that. And so you could fact check me on that. I think I read that. I don't remember now. But so Pitts is starting to look good. Meanwhile, the Dolphins, they were expected to be a 10-win team. And now they are almost certainly destined for a top 10, maybe a top 5 pick that they don't even own. I think it's fair to say at this point that their head coach, their quarterback, everyone has to be on the hot seat.
Yeah, I absolutely think everyone's on the hot seat. And just think about it. We beat this Atlanta team 32-6. Like, what has happened in the last 6 weeks? Like, Atlanta's 3-3 now. They're actually tied to make the playoffs currently. Atlanta is tied for the 7th spot in the wild card race right now. If New Orleans loses tonight on Monday Night Football, which is going on right now, they'll actually be tied for the 6th spot in the NFL. Just bizarre stuff. I had Falcons minus 2.5 in this game. They ended up winning by 2 after blowing a 2-possession lead. That's just a microcosm of how terrible my Sunday was.
You did have a rough day.
Just brutal. Like that over in Washington and that Falcons minus 2.5 is enough to just throw your hands up and be like, oh my God, what am I even doing today? But, and of course the Falcons line was at 1.5 in the morning too. I probably could have cashed out and like replaced the bet, but I was like, it's not going to matter. They're not going to win by 2.
Well, if it makes you feel better, I put money on the Eagles money line. So
did I.
Well,
by the way, that was the most popular bet of the week. Do you know that?
I did not know that.
Like across all the books, the Eagles, because it ended up moving up to Eagles minus 1 after the Waller news, which is pretty crazy. It went from plus 3.5 to minus 1. You don't see jumps like that on Sundays very often, but I guess we let the gambling community down a little bit.
Yeah. Alas. Okay, the Baltimore Ravens at the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati blows out Baltimore in this one, 41-17. Mark, are the Bengals the favorite in that division?
It's hard to say no. And I was kind of shocked after that Ravens win last weekend against the Chargers, where they looked so dominant. I think they won 38-6 or whatever it was. And they just looked like the class of the AFC. And I was like, wow, you look at this roster besides Lamar, and it just doesn't seem like it's on that level of being the class of the AFC. I think it kind of caught up to them this week when you don't get a superstar performance out of Lamar. You start to see the warts with this roster a lot more clearly. And I think that's kind of what's happening with Baltimore right now. So, if Cleveland is this banged up and if Baltimore's this banged up as well and their roster's kind of as shaky as it looked in that game, Cincinnati's going to compete to win this division. I think they play the Jets this week. So they're going to be 6-2. And that's a pretty feel-good story. Good for the Bengals, good for the Cincinnati fans, good for Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow's one of my favorite guys to watch in the league. And Jamar Chase, that play he made yesterday is just like, wow, this guy might be better than Justin Jefferson already.
Yeah, Chase is making a lot of people like you and me that thought the Bengals were crazy for not taking an offensive lineman, making us eat our words a little bit, but
I didn't hate on it quite as much. I
not
didn't,
as much as me.
just because I liked the whole Burrow. I hated the idea of the receiver pick, but just because of the whole
Yeah.
Burrow Chase dynamic, I was like, okay, if Burrow like demanded it, I get it.
Yeah,
That was where I was at.
their defense is playing really well. Burrow and Chase look really good together. And I mean, on the opposite side, Baltimore, they couldn't handle. We talked about those 5 wide sets for the Bengals. It makes it hard. You can't disguise where you're bringing pressure from. Well, they only sacked Burrow once, and they allowed 400 yards passing. It's the third time in 7 games they've allowed 400 yards through the air. So that secondary is shaky, and there's just not a lot of weapons on the offensive side. So, the Bengals, or not the Bengals, excuse me, the Ravens are always going to be scary. But like you said, Lamar has to play elite, and nobody can do that 17 games a year.
Yeah, I couldn't say it any better myself. With that roster, Lamar was kind of bending logic with how good that Ravens team was playing during that 5-game winning streak. So there was always going to be a check too. I ended up staying away from that game just because I think the Ravens are still the better team. But I was kind of afraid of a game like that where the Bengals, it was kind of their Super Bowl and they threw the kitchen sink out there, and that's clearly what ended up happening.
Yeah. So speaking of throwing the kitchen sink out there, the Jared Goff revenge game almost came to fruition. The Rams topped the Lions 28-19, but man, it was a crazy game. Detroit threw the kitchen sink at them. They successfully execute an onside kick after an opening drive touchdown. They converted 2 fake punts. Like, the Rams special teams was atrocious.
Timeout.
The Rams, yes.
Because I just realized we didn't talk about the onside kick for the Eagles. I feel like I have to touch on that because I have to leave in like 2-3 minutes. So I just wanted to touch on that real quick. Did you watch the press conference today at all with Sirianni? And he got a little salty at a reporter about onside kicks. I don't know if you saw that. So a reporter said, "So Nick, the onside kick percentage across the league, we have a large sample size, and it's 8 to 10% of the time that you get the onside kick." And Nick went like, he gave one of these faces. If you're watching us, not listening on Apple, like looking around, and he was like, "Well, that's when they expect it. 8 to 10% is when they expect it." And the guy pushed him on, and he said, "Okay, so what's the percentage when they don't expect it? What's the percentage on surprise ones?" And he's like, "I'm not giving you that number." So Sirianni getting a little salty with the media there about onside kicks. I thought that was funny. By the way, I didn't hate the call.
Yeah, I said when that happened that they were using my strategy in Madden when I can't stop somebody on defense. I just onside kick it. Maybe I get it, and if not, you'll score faster and I can get the ball back. So yeah, I didn't hate it, especially when the defense was that bad.
Yeah, I didn't hate the idea, and also just gives us the ball back faster. He's all concerned about possessions. Let's onside kick it every time if that's a concern, Sirianni.
Yeah.
No, I'm joking. But before I get out of here, I'm sure Shane's going to finish it out with the last couple 4:00 games and the Sunday night game, which we already kind of touched on. But I guess my final thought would just be watch George Karlaftis tape. He's Purdue defensive end, just an absolute mammoth. Go watch him. I hope he's an Eagle with that Colts pick in the teens or 20s. With his athletic profile, I don't think he'll end up being a top 5 pick. But George Karlaftis, DN, Purdue, he's a stud. He's gonna be my like Gregory Rousseau of this year, except they could not be more different looking and different prospects in general.
All right. Well, Mark, we will catch you later in the week when we do our Week 8 preview show. And those of you that are still here around here, I will take it the rest of the way. So, the Rams, they aren't winning pretty, but they're still winning. And so there's something to be said for that. They're going to obviously have to put the pieces together, but their division, although they're behind the Cardinals, that division has not been the gauntlet that we expected. With Geno Smith, now playing quarterback for the Seahawks instead of Russell Wilson, and just how everything has fallen apart for the 49ers. So the Rams aren't winning pretty, but they're winning. They're very much in wild card contention. They could still push for that division. The Lions continue to be close, but they continue to lose. Their fans can take solace in the fact that they are not going to have the number 1 pick. This team is going to win some games. And likely they will probably have a really good shot to win their first game next week when they play the Philadelphia Eagles. So up next, we have the Arizona Cardinals at the Houston Texans, a game that really didn't have much intrigue. You've got an undefeated team against one of the worst teams in the league starting their third string quarterback. Arizona wins 31-5 over Houston. Now, it started out better than you would have originally thought. Arizona did not score in the first quarter, and it's the first time that has happened this entire season. But they did storm back with 17 points in the second quarter, and they end up winning this game handily. For Eagles fans out there, the big moment in this game was Zach Ertz's long touchdown pass. And, we always joked about no yak Zach. Well, Zach had a lot of yak on that play. And so you got to feel good about a guy that has been a part of this team for so long that he gets to go on and play for a Super Bowl contender, a team that's even better than we thought in the regular season. And so congratulations to Zach Ertz, and I hope that they go out and they make a run for a Super Bowl. Moving on, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Chicago Bears, and I see what Mark did to me now, telling me to cover the 4:00 games by myself because there's just not a lot to talk about in these games. A 38-3 victory by the Buccaneers. Tom Brady throws his 600th touchdown pass, the first quarterback to ever hit 600 touchdown passes. And I don't know if you saw on Twitter or not, but the fan gives the ball back. Mike Evans tossed the ball up into the stands. I guess he didn't realize it was the 600th touchdown. And a team official goes over and asks for the ball back, and the guy just gave it to him. And, kudos, you did the right thing, whatever. That guy just gave six figures away. Like, that ball, he could have put that ball in line. He could have made six figures on that, taken a year or two off of work. So, but I get it. If you're a Bucs fan, you're a Tom Brady fan, he wants the ball, you just give it to him. And I'm sure the team will hook him up with some memorabilia, but he definitely let a small fortune slip through his hands when he gave that ball back. Meanwhile, the Buccaneers, they win the game, but the attrition in this secondary is just crazy. They lose two more cornerbacks to injury this game. This is a passing defense that has not been good so far this season, and they just continue to be hamstrung by injuries. And so they're 6-1. They're going to make the playoffs. You just hope that they can get healthy as the season continues on. Justin Fields goes 22 of 32, 184 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. He is sacked 4 times, and he fumbled the ball 3 times, 2 of which were lost fumbles. And so bad day for Fields, but, if you're just looking at the box score, it looks horrific. And maybe it's because I was a Justin Fields stan in the draft and I want to defend that. But if you watch the game, he wasn't as bad as it looks. On his first interception, he was told in his helmet, there's 12 guys on the field. And so he quick snaps it and he takes a shot down the field like you should do in that situation. And it gets intercepted, which shouldn't matter because it's a free play, except it wasn't. Because for the second week in a row in a free play situation, last week the flag's not thrown. This week his coach just couldn't count to 12. He's told he has a free play and it ends up with an interception. Another interception went off of his receiver's hands. And the 2 fumbles he lost, he was hit at 1.96 and 2.01 seconds after the snap. And so Matt Nagy is doing him no favors. Bill Lazor is doing him no favors. His offensive line is doing him no favors at all. And I still have a lot of confidence in Justin Fields, but you definitely hope to see some growth from him as the season goes along. And that takes us into the monsoon that was Sunday Night Football. The San Francisco 49ers at the Indianapolis Colts. I had the Indianapolis Colts money line on this game, and that ended up cashing as Indianapolis wins 30-18. In a game that was closer than that, it came down to the end, and the Colts are able to put the ball in the end zone. Carson Wentz was 17-26 for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. He added 23 yards rushing and a touchdown on a read option where he kept the ball, something we almost never saw in Philadelphia. Carson Wentz is looking good. Now, they were helped by the 49ers defense. They were flagged 5 times for 97 yards for defensive pass interference. But But regardless, the Colts win the game. Michael Pittman Jr. has 105 yards receiving and a touchdown. And this win sets the stage for a huge matchup that we'll be previewing later in the week between Indianapolis and Tennessee next week. Tennessee already has the first win in the head-to-head. Indianapolis winning here would put them one game out of first place in the division behind the Titans, and they would split the head-to-head in terms of tiebreaker. And so this is really a 2-for-1 game. If the Colts lose this game, not only would they be an extra game behind, but they would also lose the tiebreaker. So it's really a 2-game swing for the Colts if they win or lose this game. And so we'll get you guys ready for that one later in the week. The biggest red flag for the Colts heading into that one is that they just can't get pressure on opposing quarterbacks. Their pass rush is non-existent. And so they're going to have to rely on Carson Wentz to continue to take strides. They're going to have to rely on Jonathan Taylor to continue to play well, which he's done at average 5.9 yards per carry in this particular game. And so that's going to about wrap it up for this review show. A little bit shorter show today. Mark had to run there at the end, and we're into the bye week schedule now. So there's a little bit of bye time. So there's some teams that we don't talk about. So we will get you guys out of here. For my final thought is that I honestly don't know what I should be rooting for now. Eagles fans, it's like, are you going to make the playoffs? Probably not. You root for the young guys to develop. Do you root for, this team just to bottom out so they fire everybody? Like, what are you rooting for if you're an Eagles fan right now? What do you want the outcome to be? Do you want to beat the Lions on Sunday? Or do you want to lose? Because the Lions would have the number 1 pick right now, and it bumps that down. It puts your pick in a better spot. It puts the Dolphins pick in a better spot. I hate being in this situation. I hate having this feeling where I'm like torn between what do I want the outcome to be. It's a new feeling for me. It's not a feeling I remember having prior to last year. And to be so early into the 2021 season and already be struggling with that again is a tough pill to swallow. And so if you're listening out there, reply here at me on Twitter at @halfandhalf_TPL. I'd be interested to know your thoughts. What are you rooting for the Eagles season? What do you want to see happen? Well, that's going to do it for today. Thank you guys for joining us for episode number 19 of Chalk Talk. If you enjoy what you heard on the show, and we know that you do, be sure that you smash that like button, that subscribe button, so you don't miss the next episode. Drop us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. You can follow me on Twitter at @halfandhalf_TPL. Mark is at Mark Henry Jr. _. For me, from Mark, from the Painted Lines, we'll see you guys next time.